Hari Om. Hari Om and pranams to everyone. Thank you for joining in today's Gita session. We will get started now. I think most of you are already familiar with Zoom, and I did not get a chance to go through these instructions before, but if you want, you can always use the side-by-side view on your Zoom screen, which I think most of you already know, but just for those of you who may still be a little unfamiliar, all you have to do is go to the top right, select Speaker View, and then after you go there, you can actually go to the top screen where you see the green box where it says you're viewing the screen. You'll see a drop-down menu, and you can see options, and from there you can select side by side. Okay, so also I want to remind everyone, next week we will have a lecture, and that is on next Wednesday, December 30th. Just one day before the New Year's Eve. Okay, we'll get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We do the Gita Dhyanam, the whole thing. Om Pathaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavatam Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Namostute Vyasa Vishana Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pratipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Mrudaduhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Geetam Dugdam Geetamritam Mahat Vasudev Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagat Gurum Bhishma Drona Tata Jayatra Tajala Gandhara Nilopala Shalyagrahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Vela Kula Ashwattama Vikarna Ghora Makara Duryodhana Vartini Sotirna Kalu Pandavai Rananadi Kaivatraka Keshavaha Parashadhyavacha Saroja Mamalam Geetartha Gandhotkatam Nanakyanaka Kesaram Harikadaha Sambodhana Bodhitam Loke Sajjana Shatpadaira Haraha Pepiyamanam Muda Bhuyad Bharata Pankajam Kalimala Pradvamsina Shreyase Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Paramanandamadavam Yam Brahma Varunendra Rutra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangha Padakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Tatkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyaha Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Thank you. I hope the volume is okay now. Yeah. Okay. Good. So we are now looking at the Gita Dhyanam. As I mentioned before, the Gita Dhyanam is a beautiful set of 9 shlokas written by Acharya Madhusudan Saraswati ji. So the word Dhyanam itself is so beautiful. It means to contemplate, to reflect, to think. And we have seen this in many texts, even as we are chanting Vishnu Sahasranam now as part of our Margari festival, Margari month here. And very soon we are going to have Vaikuntha Ekadasi. We see that this beautiful dhyanam is so very important in the beginning of any spiritual text. It gives us an opportunity to pray and to be forever in gratitude for this wonderful knowledge. And by doing so, it puts us in a very sattvic mood, which allows us to listen to really what is to come in Bhagavad Gita. So we saw in this first Gita Dhyanam already that Bhagavad Gita is referred to as Amba, as mother, as our spiritual mother, which gives us the philosophy of Advaita or oneness. And then in the second one, which was a praise to the author, sage Vedavyasa. Vedavyasa, who with his great intellect had such a vision to write the Mahabharata, which allowed us to understand really the whole challenges of our own life. The entire life story can be seen in Mahabharata. And as it is said, that what is not there in Mahabharata will not be there in the world. So it behoves us to understand Mahabharata, which the beautiful shlokas, they form the oil of the lamp which is lit to give us this knowledge of wisdom, which is the Bhagavad Gita. So we saw this in the second Dhyana shloka. And then in the third shloka, we moved on to discuss about Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna, who is the Guru in Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna, who gives us this beautiful knowledge and who is referred to as the Prapanna Parijataya Namaha. So he is, Lord Krishna has 5 names in this beautiful Dhyana Shloka. We see Prapanna Parijataya, which is that Krishna, that Lord Krishna, to whom I surrender. Prapannam Parijataya. So by surrendering, he is the fulfiller of my desires. And he is that Krishna who holds the cane, Totra Vetra Ekapani, and in the other hand, he has the Jnana Mudra, the Jnana Mudra or the symbol of knowledge, which we saw last week about the Jnana Mudra itself, where the idea being where the Jivatma meets Paramatma, that is where is the attainment of the knowledge itself. And we also saw about how that Lord Krishna, who is milked the nectar of Gita, Gita Amrita Duhe, the one who has milked that Gita from the cows. So this, of course, leads now to the next Gita Dhyanam Shloka, which is Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudihi Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahate. So we saw about how all these Upanishads are the cows. All Sarva Upanishadaha Gavaha. Gavaha are the cows. The cows are referred to as the Gavaha, which is the milk, is referred to as the Upanishads. And you have the Vedas, which are represented by the cows. And you have Dogda Gopala Nandanaha. Dogda being the milkman. So who is the milkman? The milkman is none other than that Lord Krishna himself. And then we saw last week about how this Lord Krishna, the milkman, for him, now there are actually a comparison of 5 things and the 5 things in Gita itself. So we have next comparison is how Arjuna or Partha is now compared to a calf. Now, what is the significance here? So the whole idea being that in order for a cow to be milked, we have to have the calf next to the cow. It's only when the calf is there, the cow is so fulfilled and its udder gets filled with milk, and thereby allowing the milkman to really allowing the cow to be milked. And it is a tradition in India that when you milk the cow, the first milk is actually given to the calf, and only then the milk is taken for consumption. And it is a tradition also at the time when every house would have a cow. Now, those houses, the first thing in the morning that was done was always to do puja for the cow, and only then the milking, everything is conducted. But today, what do? We get up in the morning and we do puja to our phone. So times have changed. So this is a beautiful reminder of the beauty of the verse, the beauty of that wonderful animal, cow, which really provides everything for us. So the comparison that we have Madhusudan Saraswati ji makes in this is about how that Upanishads, which has been milked out of this Vedas, just like how the cow may have so many things, but the essence of the cow is the milk. So this is the beauty which is brought out here. Another thing which is so beautifully brought out in this verse is the aspect of who are the people who are benefiting out of this milk. Well, the people who are benefiting out of this is the men of purified intellect, or Sudihi. Sudihi are the great the enjoyers, people of wise intellect. They are the ones who get benefited out of these Upanishads. But there's another aspect to it also is Bhagavad Gita has the essence of the Upanishads. And we have seen this in many of the different, many of the chapters. For example, Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachit, which is Va Vipashchit in Kathopanishad. Then we have the Urdhva Mula Adhar Shakam, again from Kathopanishad, which is seen in chapter 15. And then we have a number of different shlokas from chapter 6, which are essentially culled out of many different Upanishads. So we have now the Upanishads being given as a nectar in this Bhagavad Gita, which is available for consumption for us. So that is the beauty which was brought out in this particular Gita Dhyanam, which is the shloka number 4. So now let's move on to the next one. The next one is another beautiful Dhyanam, which is again for Lord Krishna. where Lord Krishna is now being extolled as the Jagat Guru. So let us chant this one. Vasudevasutam Devam Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Vasudevasutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So in this beautiful Dhyana Shlokam, we have Lord Krishna being, we offer a namaskarams to Lord Krishna as the Jagat Guru. So just a small joke here. There was one particular teacher who suddenly started calling himself as a Jagat Guru. So somebody asked him, from when have you started calling yourself as Jagat Guru? He said, well, I just got a disciple and his name is Jagat. So since I'm his guru, I'm Jagat Guru. Anyway, we are not talking about that kind of a Jagat Guru. Here we are talking about Lord Krishna, who is the Jagat Guru. And such a Jagat Guru can have a Jagat Shishya like Arjuna. So Jagat Guru is really one who can teach all kinds of people, different kinds of people, which is why we see Bhagavad Gita being really so applicable to anybody and everybody who can open the Bhagavad Gita. It's a text which appeals to all people, from a common man to a rich man, to all different professions. In every way possible, we see that Bhagavad Gita has an universal appeal. So Krishnam Jagat Gurum Vande. To that Krishna, who is the Jagat Guru, we offer our namaskarams. Now, Lord Krishna certainly does not require any praises, but by praising him, it does something to us. As there is a beautiful Sanskrit verse which says, Yad bhavam tad bhavati. That is, the feeling or attitude which we have when we have something like, when we feel for it, it really decides the outcome of anything. For example, when I have this partially filled mug of water here, I can look up to it and say that it is either half full or half empty. It all depends upon the bhavam, what I have within myself. And this bhavam is really the important aspect which allows us to be a better contributor in whatever project we are in. It is this attitude of gratitude. And that's what this shloka really embodies. So by looking at Lord Krishna as Jagat Guru, my heart is filled with appreciation for this entire world in which we live in. So Aham Krishnam Vande, I offer my salutations to that Lord Krishna. So to that Krishna, we have seen in Bhagavad Gita that Lord Krishna says, you don't have to do any puja or even chanting. Even if you just take patram pushpam phalam toyam, any fruit, any simple thing, you come to me, I take care of you. That's all that he is asking for. So this is the aspect which we see as Jagat Guru here. Now coming to Vasudeva, we know that Lord Krishna was the son of Vasudeva. Vasudevasya So he was a son of Vasudeva, or Vasudevasya apatyam puman Vasudevaha. That is how we say the name of, when we want to say he is the son of this great person. Vasudevasya apatyam puman Vasudevaha. So Vasudeva refers to that supreme consciousness. And we'll be seeing this much later. And Devam also refers to that supreme consciousness. And another nice thing which you see in this shloka here is Lord Krishna being the son of Vasudeva and Devaki indicates also the greatness of parents here. So to have a great son needs great parents. And this is another aspect that you see, which is how important it is for both to together bring a transformation in the society. It is said that Lord Vishnu actually came in the dream of Devaki. And that is why we see this Devaki Paramanandam. He was born to Devaki. And so he is the delight of Devaki. He is the son of Vasudeva. In a previous shloka, we also saw Gopala Nandanaha. So see, so many beautiful names of Krishna. Each one of these names just brings delight to our heart. So that is Devaki Nandanaha. So and then next we come to Kamsa Chanura Mardanam. We see that Bhagavan destroyed two Rakshasas, Kamsa and Chanura. They both represent the Raga Dvesha. And we know who Kamsa was. Kamsa was the uncle of Lord Krishna, the brother of Devaki. So again, this shows the ability of how the inner meaning of the shloka is also seen here, which is to say that it is only this inner consciousness that can destroy a tyrant like Kamsa and Chanura. And so that we see that as well. So in short, we see that Krishna is that vital principle who, in contact with this insentient mineral compounds, is now gets this aspect of Vasudeva who's come here to help us. So now let's move on to the next month. Oh, thank you. So the next shloka is another amazing shloka which really brings out in the form of a metaphor, the whole Mahabharata War. Let us see what it is. Before I introduce the shloka, I wanted to introduce the metaphor here. So the Mahabharata War is compared to a treacherous river. Okay. Now, just like how in a river you have two banks. So you see these two banks. And then what else do the river have? The river has a lot of, this is again, you're looking at a treacherous river. The treacherous river has a lot of breakers, which breaks the water itself. It has treacherous rocks. And then again, depending upon how really fiercely violent is this river, it may have alligators, it may have crocodiles, and it may have whirlpools. So you see this beautiful metaphor being now used by Madhusudan Saraswati ji to explain the Mahabharata War. Okay, how is that? Let us see this. So we see the banks being represented by the great acharyas, Bhishma and Drona. And you have the water, which is compared to, you have the water compared to Jayadratha. Okay, another great warrior. And then you have the water breakers, this is compared to the great warrior Karna. And then you have the crocodiles, who are represented by Ashwatthama and Vikarna. And we'll go through in detail about each one of these warriors. And depending upon the time, I would love to give some stories about each one of them, what part they played, and why we are discussing them. And the treacherous rocks are none then compared to Shakuni. And finally, the whirlpool. Whirlpool is compared to Duryodhana himself. So this Mahabharata war is how we can look at even our own lives. Who are these whirlpools? Who are the water breakers? Who are the crocodiles? I know it sounds really big things, right? Our problems in life are not really that huge when compared to this. But yet, we sometimes tend to take a lot of these things seriously. So this is why we need to understand how the shloka has been put together so beautifully by Madhusudan Saraswati ji. So Mahabharata War represents our daily struggles here. So let us chant this beautiful shloka here. Bhishmadronatata jayatrata jala Bhishmadronatata jayatra Bhishmadronatata jayatra jala Gandharani lopala Shalyagrahavati kripena vahani Shalyagraha kripena vahani Karnena vela kula Ashwathama vikarna ghora makaram Ashwathama vikarna ghora makaram Duryodhana vartini Sotirna khalu pandavai rananadi Sotirna khalu pandavai rananadi Kaivatrakah Keshavaha Bhishmadronadata jayatrata jala Gandharani lopala Shalyagrahavati kripena vahani Karnena vela kula Ashwathama vikarna ghora makaram Duryodhana vartini Sotirna khalu pandavai rananadi Kaivatraka Keshavaha. So, the whole analogy that I just showed you in the previous slide is what is given here. Bhishma and Drona are the banks, Jayatratha as the water, the king of Gandhara as it says blue water lily, but I'm going to discuss this a little bit here because at the course, we were given a couple of different variations to look at here, and I want to present the one which most suits this description of Shakuni. Shalya Grahavati, with Shalya as the shark, Kripa as the current, Karna as the breaker, Ashwathama and Vikarna as the terrible crocodiles, and Duryodhana as a whirlpool. How is it ever going to be possible to cross this river? It is possible only when you have Lord Krishna as the ferryman. Kaivartakaha Keshavaha. And this is the metaphor beautifully brought out in this particular shloka. Let me go back to that slide there. So this is a beautiful thing that we see Madhusudan Saraswati ji employ in as a nice metaphor to bring really for the meditator this aspect of a river. So for all of us, average people, we face some challenge or the other. Nothing really compared to what Pandavas went through. But in spite of all those challenges, they were able to cross the river by the help of, by the grace of Lord Krishna. And that is what is shown here. Kaivatrakaha Keshavaha. So let us talk a little bit about all the characters and why they were such great warriors. Bhishma and Drona. Now they are the banks. Bhishma, as you know, had a boon that he could have a death whenever he wants, which means he was invincible. There was just no way anybody could kill him. So it was him we have as one of the banks. Okay. And the only way that he actually got killed was by the help of Lord Krishna, who was able to help Arjuna in having Shikhandi. And as you know, that Bhishma would never have had a vow that nobody could kill him, and he would never thwart an arrow from a woman. And he knew Shikhandi was a woman, and therefore when Shikhandi sent the arrow really did not hit him, but it was actually Arjuna who was at the back of Shikhandi, whose arrow followed Shikhandi's arrow, and that was the arrow that actually then finally hit. We have Bhishma. So Lord Krishna made it possible to do that. Next, we have Drona. Drona was another great acharya who forms the other bank there. Now, about Drona also, we knew how attached he was to his son Ashwathama. And you know the story about how when he gets the news about the fact that Ashwathama was dead, it was actually the elephant Ashwathama who was dead. And so he goes to Yudhishthira and he asks him, "Oh, Yudhishthira, tell me, is it true?" Because he knew Yudhishthira would tell him the truth. And Yudhishthira says, yes. Now, Yudhishthira was referring to the Ashwathama, the elephant. But what Drona heard was something else. So in this process, he was also killed in this war. And then you have like Shakuni. Now, Shakuni was the uncle of Duryodhana. And he is now referred to here as Nilopala. Nilopala indicating a blue rock. Those treacherous rocks, when you are in the midst of a river which is flowing with water, it gets covered by a moss, a blue moss, which gives it a color of a blue color. And Shakuni is now compared to this mossy rocks, or in other words, as a slimy person. So we know about the story of Shakuni, about how he was responsible for the Pandavas to go to the forest. Now they had to fight, the Pandavas had to fight somebody like Shakuni. And then you had Shalya who was a shark. I mean, Shalya is compared to a shark here. Okay. Now, Shalya was also one of those great warriors who actually was coming to see the Pandavas. But somehow he was intercepted by Karna, and then Karna wanted him to drive his chariot. And therefore, you find that he got on the Kaurava's side. And then Kripacharya was another great warrior. He's compared to the current. and Karna as the water breakers. And Ashwatthama and Vikarna were the terrible crocodiles. Each one so good in their way that there is no way that even Pandavas, as intelligent warriors that they were, could have ever really won the war. And the only way they were able to win this was with the help of Krishna, who in each and every case knew the weaknesses or knew things which the Pandavas could never ever have known. And only by surrendering to Lord Krishna was the Pandavas able to really win the war. There are so many stories about this. Jayadratha, for example. Jayadratha was a person who could never have been killed by himself, could never be killed. In fact, the story goes that if somebody were to kill him, then that person's head would be cut off. So very, very clever ways had to be involved in order to kill somebody like Jayadratha. So that was another, but then that was also made possible. Duryodhana. Duryodhana was killed again by Bhima. Even though Bhima was stronger than Duryodhana, but Duryodhana was much more powerful, much more smarter and intelligent. So the only way he was also killed was only because of Bhima hitting him at a point which was not really protected, and therefore Duryodhana was also killed. So again, Karna, the story of Karna is so beautiful here too. We find that Karna, who was so generous, he was so intelligent, but yet so generous. And Karna had this invincible shield and armor, which nobody could break in. So then we find that Arjuna's father, Indra, goes to Karna and then asks for that particular shield and the armor and everything. And Karna just generously gives it away. And Karna tells Indra, I know why you have come here, but yet I'm going to give this. So Indra then gives him a boon, gives him Shakti, actually a great weapon, so which he could use it once. But here too, through a trick by which Gatotkacha dies because of the Shakti weapon, we find that Karna gets killed here. So each and everything was possible only by Krishna. So the moral of this particular Gita Dhyanam is that even if big terrific challenges comes our way, by surrendering to Lord Krishna, he acts as a ferryman to take us across this life for us. And I want to show the next slide here, which shows a beautiful picture where we have Lord Krishna taking the Pandavas in the boat. As a metaphorically, you see the Vikarna, Ashwatthama and Vikarna, you see Shakuni, and Shalya, the shark, and then you have the treacherous rock of Shalya, then you have Duryodhana as a whirlpool. So but then with the help of Lord Krishna, it is possible to go through this life. Next, we have another beautiful shloka which extols the greatness of Mahabharata. So here we have Bhagavad Gita being compared as a lotus flower here, and we chant this one. Parasharya vacha saroja mamalam, Parasharya vacha saroja mamalam, Gitartha gandhotkatam, Gitartha gandhotkatam, Nanakyanaka kesaram harikadaha, Nanakyanaka kesaram harikada, Sambodhana bodhitam, Sambodhana bodhitam, Loke sajjana shatpadairaharaha, Loke sajjana shatpadairaharaha, Pepiyamanam muda. Pepiyamanam muda. Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala. Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala. Pradvamsina shreyase. Pradvamsina shreyase. Parasharyavachas sarojamamalam. Geetartha gandhotkatam. Nanakyanakakesaram harikada. Sambodhana bodhitam. Loke sajjana shatpadaira haraha. Pepiyamanam muda. Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala. Pradvamsina shreyase. So, Bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala pradvamsina shreyase. So may this lotus of the Mahabharata safely come out of the imperfections. Kalimala. Kalimala, mala means imperfection. Kali referring to Kali Yuga. So Kalimala, pradvamsi na shreyase. So let it emerge out and produce and do us a lot of supreme good. So bhuyat bharata pankajam kalimala pradvamsi na shreyase. So here we see that this beautiful lotus of Mahabharata is being compared here. And what is that? So we have the words of the son, Vyasa, of Parashara, one of the son of Parashara. We have sage Vyasa, who is none other than the son of Parashara Muni, Parasharasya Vachaha, Sarojam. Sarojam referring to that beautiful lotus. Okay. And it is Amalam Gita Artha Gandha Utkatam. That beautiful lotus, it has the fragrance of that Bhagavad Gita which just pervades everywhere. Nana Kyanaka Kesaram Harikadaha Sambodhana Bodhitam. It has got so many, Mahabharata has got so many Akhyayika. Akhyayika, or the stories, the various stories which are there, each one are just referring to the beautiful message of that Hari, of that Lord Vishnu, Hari Vishnu, Hari Kataha, which makes up that full-blown lotus. And this beautiful lotus is being really hunted by the Shatpadaihi. Shatpadaihi, or which is referring to the 6-footed beings. Such a beautiful description here, right? Such a beautiful description for the bees. The bees are referred to as a Shatpadaihi, which goes every day, aha, day by day, it goes to this beautiful lotus to drink its nectar. And the bees are now compared to those people who have recognized the nectar which is there in the Mahabharata, and therefore they go to it again and again and again. It's not just a one-time deal, but it is going again and again to this beautiful lotus. So that's the meaning of this particular shloka. So understanding this is so very important, because as we know, the lotus grows in waters and, in places, it grows in ponds and lakes, which in the waters of, they are referred to by the Vyasa's beautiful, pregnant poetic words. And here we see that Vyasa, by saying that he's the son of Parashara, gives you an idea of really his lineage, that his lineage being that he was born to this great Parashara, who was a great Brahmana Rishi, and his mother was a fisherwoman. The story actually need to be taken in its perspective, in the sense that Vyasa was able to fish out the best that is contained in Mahabharata itself, and bring out the best in the Mahabharata. So that's the essence of what this shloka talks about: the greatness about Vyasa, greatness about Mahabharata, and how the Mahabharata being filled with so many stories, and how in each one of the stories we have the essence of Lord Krishna's and Lord Hari's Mahima having been brought out. So this is considered to be as a Mahabharata stuti, okay, and in praise of the Mahabharata itself. So with that, let's move on to the next shloka here. So the next one, oh yes, this is, I wanted to bring this to show you this example of this full-blown lotus, which many of the petals, sepals, and everything inside refers to the stories. And here you see the bee trying to cull out the essence or the nectar from the Mahabharata itself. The next Dhyana shloka, and we're coming almost to the end. Hopefully, I might be able to finish it today, I think. I'll probably take another 5-7 minutes. I know we are 9:16 right now, but I'll just try. Next one is Mukham karoti vachalam. Mukham karoti vachalam. Pangum langayate girim. Pangum langayate girim. Yat kripa tamaham vande. Yat kripa tamaham vande. Paramananda madhavam. Paramananda madhavam. Mukham karoti vachalam. Pangum langayate girim. Yat kripa tamaham vande. Paramananda madhavam. So this again is in praise of that Lord Krishna, and it's in praise about how it's by his divine grace that he makes the impossible possible. Okay, what does that mean? So by whose grace? Yat kripa, by whose grace? Tam aham vande, I pray to that Lord Krishna, by whose divine grace, that Madhavam, Paramananda Madhavam, by which even a dumb person can become eloquent. Mukham karoti vachalam. Pangum, a cripple, can actually cross a mountain. Langayate girim. Giri refers to a mountain. So Pangum langayate girim. Amazing. It's a beautiful, again, it's a very popular shloka here. Basically trying to say that by Lord's grace, nothing is really impossible for a devotee. He will make anything and everything possible. And which is true. If you think about it, all of us, as we know, like even Swami Vivekananda, as Gurudev in his book beautifully gives us examples about how when Narendra, how did he become this great Swami Vivekananda? How did he become such an eloquent speaker? And how is it possible for somebody like Sri Swami Ramatirtha to become so great? How, and Gurudev even goes to the extent of saying, how about even that child of Jerusalem, who became the Jesus? So he gives all these beautiful examples to show that anything and everything is possible by the divine grace of Lord Krishna. The inner meaning of this one is also beautifully brought out here to show that, for example, Pangum langayate girim. this is referring to somebody who is incapacitated. In giving this example, somebody who is a cripple, for example, he has one leg which is not working well, one leg which works well. So the inner meaning of this, which Gurudev in his book beautifully says about how that for a person to move forward in life, the mind and the intellect, which is represented by both the legs, both of them have to work together. So it is only by the grace of God that a person becomes wise, becomes intelligent, and is able to serve the community, serve the society. So that is one way to look at how the inner beauty of this shloka is brought out. And as Swamiji would also say this, is that for all of us who are now, who have studied Bhagavad Gita and who are able to even give to spread this divine knowledge, it is only possible by divine grace of Krishna, because we all came from a materialistic life. How could we even look inwards? How could we look inside spiritually? So mukham karoti vachalam could be taken in that regard as well, where it is only by divine grace that the spiritual knowledge can come to everyone. And now finally, the last shloka, which really goes to now offer our namaskarams to that God, to that eternal truth, Lord Krishna, who is an embodiment of that eternal truth. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi. Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi. Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi. Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi. Gayantiyam samagaha. Gayantiyam samagaha. Dhyanavastita datkatena manasa. Dhyanavastita datkatena manasa. Pashyantiyam yoginaha. Pashyantiyam yoginaha. Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha. Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha. Devaya tasmai namaha. Devaya tasmai namaha. Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha. Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi. Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi. Gayantiyam samagaha. Dhyanavastita datkatena manasa. Pashyantiyam yoginaha. Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha. Devaya tasmai namaha. So this shloka by Madhusudanji is in praise of that divine consciousness. So that divine truth whom the creator Brahmaji, Yam Brahma, Varunendra Marutaha, Lord Varuna, Lord Indra, Lord Rudra, and the Marutas, they all stunvanti, they invoke those great divine hymns. Divyai stavaihi, vedaihi saha anga pada krama upanishadaihi. So these who by the Vedas with their angas. So when we talk about the angas, there are actually 6 of them. Okay, the 6 which is the Nirukta, Chandas, Vyakaranam, Joshita, astrology. So all these 6 angas, okay, they are Vedahi, who by the Vedas and the 6 limbs of the Vedas, which are invoked by the singers of the Samaveda. So in Samaveda, you have different kinds of patha. Patha, we say, or the way of rendering of the mantras. Pada, Krama, Upanishad methods. So all these methods, so by those people who actually use the Samaveda, who sing this. So there are three kinds of people. First, you have all the devas, represented by Brahmaji, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, etc. And then you have the singers of Samaveda, those people who are well versed in Vedas. And then the third group of people who, the yogis who have meditated upon that God, Lord, through the perfect meditation, dhyana avastita tadkatena manasa, okay, by them. So, and whose limits are not known by the hosts of gods and demons, that is Sura and Asuraha, Ganaha. All those, even they cannot fathom really the greatness of that Lord. To that divine truth, I offer the salutations. So this was the last shloka. And with that, I think we will come to a close. We have now completed all the 9 shlokas of the Gita Dhyanam. And next week, we will start with the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Before we start the first chapter, we will actually give a little bit of introduction to go back and pick up Mahabharata from where we left off before we start with the first shloka itself of the first chapter. So next week, we will have a session. And if anybody has any questions or any comments, you can reach me at the phone number that I've shown here or by email.